Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Great to be with you, Dr.
Good.
Paul.
You know, I have, over my political career, always looked for the optimism of what we do, that if we have bad things going on, something good will come of it. And I still do my best to follow it. But then there are some days, I'll tell you, it looks like it's going to take a while for the people to come to senses. There's an old saying that people lose their minds in mobs, and it takes time, over a period of time, because they only regain their senses one person at a time. So we'll work on it, but we have more than one person at a time that's paying attention to what we're doing. I see, Chris, that our number of viewers on YouTube is up to 210,000, which is very good. Sometimes people write in and say, why don't you have 500,000 or a million? Well, that's a different story. But the thing of it is, we do work on the assumption that we're looking for quality and people who want the honest answers to our problems. And we are getting more viewers and more listeners. So we're going to continue to do that. But right now, it's getting pretty bad because there's so much distortion. This whole thing that, that there's a distortion. If there's an argument now that if China had only done something sooner, it wouldn't have spread around the world. So China is getting bashed now. It's all their fault, and they made a mistake, and there were a lot of mistakes made by the president and everybody else to take care of this virus. What they don't ever really talk about, and I think on purpose, is that they should have been talking a long time and making the predictions about what would happen if we don't change our political economic system. And that's what stays the same. Spending, printing money, gouging one group, bailing out another group, and it continues. And people thought, well, there was a big change in 2009, and after that with QE, everything got back to normal, they claimed, and the stock market soared and unemployment rates went down, but it was all fiction. And the fiction ended sharply, more sharply than most people expected. I don't think anybody could predict that a month ago it was all going to happen. Potentially, though, we understood it could happen because it was all fragile. The foundation of our system has been undermined, and that's what we're facing. Because, yes, we can keep doing the same thing over and again. And, Chris, I am sure that you agree that what we hear is same old thing. Spend more money, print more money, more Federal Reserve, and then the armed might of the government to come in, and if your social behavior is not correct, we will make you do certain things and keep you in your houses. And the martial law attitude is marching in. The governors are enjoying it. The mayors of the cities are enjoying it. And politicians are there because they're basically authoritarian. And this is a gold mine for them. And they would never admit this because they're always doing what is best for the people. They're humanitarians, and there's a few who know exactly what they're doing, but many are in belief that they're humanitarians, and this is the only way you can do it. You can't let people starve, but my argument, Chris, is that if we continue these policies, the conditions, social and economics, get much worse because they're still doing the same thing economically, philosophically, and to do that, they have to systematically erode our liberties. And a good example of what they did after 9/11 with passing the Patriot Act was the erosion of liberty that we never got back again. I believe that's what's happening today with this artificially overblown, panicky attitude about a cold virus. And once again, I don't want to belittle it because people get sick, but I'll tell you what, I can list some statistics where thousands and thousands of people die that don't even compare to the coronaviruses. For instance, influenza. We've already had 50,000 deaths in this flu season from influenza, and nobody's getting hysterical. But this coronavirus fit the scheme, and it's working, and the media just loves it, and the blame game is on. So, Chris, we have a job today and every day to help try to sort this out and try to get the people to understand exactly what's going on.
Yes, Dr. Paul, and I wanted to point out that, prior to this coronavirus scare, the U.S. was, and obviously still is, in absolutely terrible financial shape, with the federal government being the king of them all, with 23 trillion in debt that they never plan on paying, with 100+ trillion in unfunded liabilities, promises for the future, in other words. And then you go down from there to the bankrupt states and the corporations that are swimming in debt. And then finally down to the individuals that are swimming in every kind of conceivable debt you could imagine. And now with this, of trying to close down economy and running to government, help us for solutions. And their solutions is to bail out everyone by printing money. I mean, this is insane. And they're basically saying, if you think this is bad, wait until the future when the effects of these solutions start to pop up. And, our very good friend, Bob Wenzel, has pointed out that, this is different than 2008. Back then, all those trillions in bailout stuff, that stuff was parked at the Fed. The money was parked at the Fed. And in non-technical terms, that means, it didn't make its way into the economy. It's very different this time. All this money printing, it's going straight into the economy. So we can expect, what you're going to talk about soon, an inflationary recession, depression with prices driving up. So instead of throwing in a towel, they're making a much worse situation for us in the future.
Yes, and there's a lot who aren't as unhappy with this as we are. They see this as an opportunity because we've heard words from the socialists coming alive in this country and going to the Congress, and they're talking about modern monetary theory. Well, there's nothing new about that. That's what they've been doing, and they're well into that. So they are just pushing it. So the few who really know what they're doing, they're looking for chaos, whether it's the cultural Marxists or the economic Marxists. They're looking for the opportunity to enhance the power and the control of the state. Now it's getting militarized, and was mentioned that one of the pieces of legislation that Trump uses is the Defense Production Act. And that's been around since 1950, something I've talked about many times over the years. It is literally a blueprint for total dictatorship in this country. And I always try to get that out of the way because they said, well, we always might use it. And that's what they're using now. And literally, if you want to get really concerned where the power is coming from, you have to read the Defense Production Act. Because what the president is doing and what he's saying, and really the toleration of what the mayors and the governors are doing, is all part of that, because we're at war now, and therefore we can do anything we want, and it's been legalized. It does not need congressional approval. Not that they wouldn't give it, because right now the Congress still has the authority to limit funding, but here they go. The Fed gets involved in the trillions and trillions of dollars. Today it was announced they're going to buy another $1 trillion worth of security. And the Fed doesn't have any money. They create it and dilute the value of the money on the middle class. So it's taken from the middle class. So it is trillions of dollars there. And then the Congress comes along and they have to get the political benefit from some of this too. So they pump it up, and they have appropriations for bailing out everybody. Trillions of dollars, or well over $1 trillion already. And that's small compared to what the Fed does. It's going to be many, many trillions of dollars. Eventually, the value of the currency is going to continue to deteriorate, and these problems are going to get much worse. The fact that they're going to do this a little differently this time, not just send the money to the banks and the corporations, but they want to send it to the people themselves, like proposals up to $2,000 a year or a month, to bail out the people. But if they do that, that will convert this problem. That will convert it into a depression, and the individuals will be involved. The money will be spread out, and then you're going to see the price inflation. Not that we don't have that available already, is the price inflation. But what we're working toward is an inflationary depression. It's, what's happened here in the last month is it's astounding how quickly it dropped off a cliff. Though Austrian economics teaches that that's the way it can happen, but we always hope it wouldn't happen that way. So it's dropped off this cliff, and now we're well on our way to an inflationary depression, which will not be solved unless the people understand why the government has to change its policies. But the tragedy there is, if you do that, it means that we'd have to tighten our belts. And how can you do that? The belts won't be tightened, literally. It will be tightened by destroying the value of the money, and then we will be forced to do those things we've talked about for so many months and years, and that is, we have to quit. We have to quit the welfare state. We have to quit the special interests. We have to quit the warmongering, and it will be forced into it. But we're well on our way to an inflationary depression. It's not. People argued about are we having deflation? Well, an inflationary depression, you don't have deflation. The money supply doesn't shrink because what they're doing right now, the Congress and the Fed's proving. Under the worst of circumstances, we can print the money. Of course, they printed like crazy these past 10 years, but it never did what the government wanted. So, and right now, the market is trying to deflate that and get rid of the debt, which to a degree they're achieving. But now they will have to do it. We have to get the money into the hands of the people, and that's when you'll see the price inflation going up. But only a change in attitude and understanding of monetary policy and a change in the principles of liberty, and say that governments can't take care of us. This is what it creates. Socialism has been around a long time, socialist thinking. But right now, we're verging on much more something closer to fascism with a printing press that the world still is accepting. Nobody's complaining about the Fed bailing out by the trillions of dollars because the world is in on it together. And that is what we've tried to explain for years, is that this is different because the dollar is the reserve currency of the world, and we have benefited on the short run from that, but we're all going to suffer from it. And the solution has to be sound economic thinking and a concern for personal liberty and personal responsibility. If we did all those things all at once, we would recover. That would be the good news. It's not that complicated. Just let the people go. Stop all the taxes. Get rid of the federal government regulations. Bring our troops home, and things would perk up. If everybody could go to work and know they have no taxes to pay for a year, believe me, they would work real hard and solve their problem. But that's a philosophic necessity, but we're a long way from that. So the best we can do right now, Chris, is keep emphasizing the mistakes that brought us to this point.
Yes, Dr. Paul, and you nailed it with it's a philosophical problem. And it's a very sad fact that here in America, the first land of liberty officially, that the philosophy has been turned completely upside down. Everyone is trained from the moment they're born until they're an adult, they don't even know any differently, that when there's a problem, you go to government for the solution. And everybody will tell you that, whether it's the government schools, the media, university professors, across the board. When there's a problem, you go to government. They're the solution providers. And look, there's a virus, and people instinctively just go right to government for their orders. And what do? They just took a steamroller to everything, and they're closing everything down, and would they even think of such a thing without a Federal Reserve? Because like you mentioned, Dr. Paul, they have this modern monetary theory that they could just print as much money as they want. I mean, who would ever think of such a thing as a good idea without a Federal Reserve? Or bailing everyone out? Without a Federal Reserve, that's not an option. You're forced to think rationally. You're forced to think of actual solutions. But instead, they're not thinking rationally. They're thinking of the same thing that everybody has been taught, all along, to keep doing the same wrong things over and over and expecting a different result. And the rational is just cast aside. And the rational is freedom, to let people be free to come up with solutions that you can't even think of, that's not centralized, that comes from Mount Olympus down onto everyone else. Instead, they're taking away freedom and making everything worse.
I was wondering, as I do often, is what would they say if we came up with a solution that said, we're in trouble. There's a maldistribution of wealth. A lot of people are suffering. Some people are doing better than they should. And it's a real mess. But right now, we're going to have a lot of people in the streets. We already had a lot of people in the streets, homeless as a result of many mistakes that we have made. But what if the announcement is official and say, well, this is a problem, and the solution is that we have to legalize theft. We have to say, from now on, we're not going to punish. As a matter of fact, there's some people who have already suggested this, which is scary. No, we're going to legalize theft nationally. That if your neighbor has more than you have, if they were able to get to the store and they were able to get enough food there to last them, or they did something else, or they had provided for their own self, and you have nothing, it's going to be legal for you to steal that from them because you need it and they have it, and it's not fair. So therefore, you can go and do it, and there will be no punishment whatsoever. And people say, are you crazy? You mean just legalize people going into somebody's house and taking it? But morally and economically, we already have that system. Because yes, some people have more than others, and systematically we have tried to redistribute that wealth by the monetary system. And we send IRS agents in. If somebody has more than they should, what we have to do is punish them. So, and that is redistribution, but it's all legal. It's legal plunder, and this is the whole problem. But one thing in this bailout package, I noticed that everybody gets a bailout, but they don't want the image of what happened in '09, and that is, some of the people who were running the corporations and banks, they got off scot-free and made a whole lot of money, and they shouldn't have, and there was a lot of crimes committed there. But the image there, especially by the Republicans, we can't let that happen. That's why they're moving toward, helicopter money. We have to pass it out to the people. And there's one stipulation in there that if you have a company that is struggling and maybe gets a tax break, he doesn't get the tax break until you take his CEO. The leaders of the company can't make more than $425,000. Well, you say, well, that's plenty of money. He can live off that. But what if you don't have money? What if the $425,000 employer, maybe he doesn't have to work. Maybe he can fly out of the country or something. What I'm saying is, all of a sudden, you're not going to have people running those companies. This whole idea that you can rig prices, that's the problem. Congress rigs prices, the Federal Reserve rigs prices, and they rig the interest rate, the worst rigging of all prices. And they think that people in Washington that call themselves politicians and humanitarians are smarter than the people themselves. But tell you what, I've been there, and it's not true. It's not true. You'd be more scared if you had to be exposed to some of their thoughts in their personal conversations, because so often, sometimes they know exactly what's right, and they admit, and they have admitted to me, yeah, you're right. You're right about that. But the people are stupid. They won't know how to take care of themselves. They need us. They need the politician to explain to them, we need to have emergency funding. We need to do this. We need a Federal Reserve. And they'll go on, and they believe that. So it's rather scary. And sometimes when the left and the radicals and the socialists say, well, we can't let you do that because look at the unfairness they have. But what do you do when you put people in charge of the Federal Reserve? Are they all of a sudden going to get so smart that they're going to know what interest rates should be and how to run an economy? It's all based on a fallacy, and the fallacy is that economic planning works. It doesn't work. The only thing that really works, if you're looking for prosperity, is to make sure that people are left to take care of themselves, mind their own business, and have an honest system, have property rights and contract rights. All the very, very simple things that have been talked about for thousands of years and have worked until the authoritarians get in charge. Government is fine except for the authoritarians, and 92% of the individuals or more are authoritarians in government, and they wouldn't admit it, but they sort of enjoy a lot of this activity because they have a chance to be important. All you have to do is watch the evening news. news and you see, boy, this guy really thinks he's important. He knows exactly what we have to do. We'll have to listen to him. So Chris, what do you think is going to happen now in the near future? Are you as hopeful? And I think I'm hopeful that'll happen, but I have my fingers crossed. But I know one thing, that the message that we need is crystal clear to the people who want to look for it.
Yes, Dr. Paul, I'll finish up. I am long-term optimistic for sure, because truth cannot be defeated, no matter how long it takes. So, what we're dealing with is a Federal Reserve that really should not exist, should never have been created, and it's now becoming very obvious why. Every boom and bust is getting worse and worse. All you have to do is, be around for 20 years to see the NASDAQ stock bubble, the housing bubble, this current bubble. And every time we're hearing that the recovery packages have to be bigger and bigger and bigger. This is unsustainable. The Fed is unsustainable. The Fed will end itself. It doesn't need our help, doesn't need anybody's help. It will end itself. But the sooner that they get to that point, the better. And the sooner that the American people understand liberty, freedom, and sound money, the better. And the best way to do that is to just speak it. We have hundreds of thousands of people that watch. Speak it to the people. I mean, the network effect takes over. And who cares if they don't believe it? You might say, they're not going to believe what I have to say. It's crazy. Who cares? Fine. They don't have to believe it. They have to hear it. That's the most important part. And for most people, it's the first time that they hear it in their life. That's how important it is. So thank you for watching us, and let's spread the ideas of it.
Very, very good, Chris. And, I think the coronavirus emergency has been used. I don't think, and I've said it before, I don't think it's nearly as bad as it's said to be. I think it's serious. I think people get sick. People can die from it. But most people who die are elderly, and they have already had another condition. And people say, well, you're downplaying the importance. No, I'm trying to put it in perspective, because many people, we lose 4,000 people every month on the highways, and nobody gets worried about it. And that's a government-run project. So it goes on. And the influenza, I already mentioned, there's over 50,000 died this year already from it. I think the coronavirus has been used to distract from some of the things, or all the things, that the Federal Reserve has done. This creature that we're dealing with today, this downturn, the economic problem, has been manufactured by the people who believe in the Federal Reserve System and believe that money can be created out of thin air, and that rigging interest rates is beneficial, and price control and people control, and also martial law will solve all these problems. They have to distract from it. They've sort of neglected, they're not talking too much about foreign policy right now, but there's still some danger spots in the world. And in the midst of all this, we're inflaming our relations with China. We know China's not perfect, but I think our job is to look at our own imperfection. But this whole idea that they were fighting and fuming and trying to stir up trouble, this is the reason the virus has to be exaggerated. And but they are going to be so disappointed if some of the predictions from some people that are reputable are saying, in warmer weather, most viruses, are diminished in severity, and who knows how much truth we're getting out of China. But I tend to believe there is some truth about it, that their serious escalation of the people getting sick from the virus in China is probably diminished. But that's the way viruses work. So it may happen. So I'm hoping that the global warming people who used to worry so much, I think we need a little global warming a little sooner, and maybe nature is going to take care of it, that they're going to have a hard time continuing to lie to the people, of how serious this is. And once again, I think it is serious, but I think having a real bad cold and getting a cold in your chest, which people will know about for years and years, that isn't the time to get exhausted, not eat right, don't take your vitamins, don't get in the sun, and do all these things. What we're facing is a crisis in the abuse of our immune system. That is a big contributor, and not many people talk about that. So there's a lot that we could do, and I still think that just as quickly as this came, I wish that it would go away that quick, but it'll start to go away. I think we can see signs of that already, but let's hope it moves much faster than anybody expects, and that would be a blessing for all of us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.